Hello everyone, welcome to our class. My name is Ko-Chen Lee. In today's sections, we will talk about Server 2008 installations. Before we start, we need to do some preparations. Installing a Server 2008 operating system requires some assessment and preparations before you actually do the work. You will want to review the server hardware and installation details, check the latest technical notes, verify backups, and have some more than a few discussions with other information technology staff and managers. The baseline requirements for the most versions of Windows Server 2008 are similar, such as a minimum of 1 GHz CPU, 512 megabytes of random access memory, and 10 gigabytes of hard disk drive space. However, some differences in recommended hardware for some specific additions, like web server, standards, enterprise, and data centers, and further differences to support the 64-bit versions on Itanium-based servers. Once your system meets the hardware requirements for Server 2008, then you are ready to install the operating system. During the installations, you need to follow a lot of procedures and will encounter many situations. Booting from the Windows Server 2008 distribution media is certainly the simplest. You need only set your server through BIOS to boot from the DVD-ROM and put Server 2008 installation disk in the drive. Then you are ready to go. When you are working with Windows Server 2008 on 86-based systems, you should be aware of the special types of drive sections used by the operating system. The first one, active. The active partition or volumes is the drive sections for system cache and startup. Some devices with removable storage may be listed as having an active partitions. Second, boot. The boot partition or volumes contains the operating systems and its support files. The system and the boot partitions or volumes can be the same. 3. Crash dump. The partition to which the computer attempts to write dump files in the event of a system crash. By default, dump files are returned to the system root folder, but can be located on any desired partitions or volumes. 4. Page file. A partition containing a paging file used by the operating system. Because a computer can page memory to multiple disks. According to the way you configure virtual memory, a computer can have multiple page file partitions or volumes. 5. System. The system partition or volume contains the hardware specific files needed to load the operating systems. As part of software configurations, the system partition or volume cannot be part of a striped or spanded volumes. And there are a number of differences when storing to the Intel Architecture 64 Itanium-based hardware platform. The IA64 extended firmware interface starts up loading a firmware-based boot menu. IA64 disks have a partition structure called a globally unique identifier, GUID, partition table. That differs from the 32-bit platform's master boot record-based partitions. A GUID partition table-based disk has two required partitions and one or more optional partitions. The first one, EFI system partitions, ESP, and the second one, Microsoft Reserve partitions, MSR, and the third one, at least one data partitions. Now you should create a partition for the operating system with at least 40 gigabyte minimum. This allows you to install the addition of service packs and other programs. Don't forget that you need to have enough disk space for the page file and crash dump. To manage your data file easily, it is better to have multiple partitions. Even if the computer has only one drive, if you plan to create multiple partitions, you don't have to worry about doing it when installing the operating systems. You can configure the Windows operating system to use a partition of the correct size, such as 40 gigabytes or more, and then create the other partitions that you want to use after the installation is finished. And you can deploy servers using one of two installation types. First one, full server installations. The full server installation type is a full feature installation options of Windows Server 2008 Standard, Windows Server 2008 Enterprise, and Windows Server 2008 Data Center that provides full functionality. This installation option provides the most dynamic solutions and is recommended for deployment of Windows Server 2008, in which the server role may change over time. Second, core server installations. The core server installation type is a minimal installation option for Windows Server 2008 Standard, Enterprise, and Data Center that provides a fixed subset of roles. This installation option is ideally suited to situations in which you want to dedicate servers to a specific server role or combination of roles. Because additional functionality is not installed, this reduces the overhead caused by other services and provides more resource for the dedicated role or roles. You choose the installation type during installation of the operating system. At times, you might want to dedicate the server to a specific role or combination of roles. And at other times, a server's role may change over time. Therefore, both installation options have a place in a typical enterprise. To help users and ease the administration burdens, you might decide to use a naming schema that helps identify what the computer does and where it is located. For example, you can name the first server in the IT department IT Server 01. The name identifies the computer as a server and specifies the department. Keep in mind that computer names must be unique in the domains and must be 64 characters or less in length. Further, for DNS capability, the name should consist of only alphabets, numbers, characters, and a hyphen. During installations, you must decide on several important network and domain membership options, such as the following. which protocols the server will use. You must decide whether you want to use static IP addressing or dynamic IP addressing, whether the server will be a member of the domain. If a server is a member of a domain, users with domain membership or permissions can access the server. In contrast, if a server is a member of a workbook group, users must log on each time they want to work with a server. What networking components will be installed? During installations, you have the opportunity to install networking components. The common networking components for servers are selected automatically. To perform a clean installation of Windows Server 2008, complete the following steps. First, start a setup program using one of the following techniques. For a new installation, turn on the computer and install Windows Server 2008 distribution media into the computer's DVD-ROM drive. Press the key to start setup from your media when prompted. For a clean installation over existing installations, start a computer and log on using an account with administrator privileges. Insert the Windows Server 2008 distribution media into the computer's DVD-ROM drive. Setup should start automatically. If setup doesn't start automatically, use Windows Explorer to access the distribution media and then double-click setup.exe. On the next setup page, note that you have several options. Install now by clicking Install Now. You can start the installation. And what to know before installing Windows Server 2008 by clicking What to know before installing. Windows Server 2008, you can review helpful information about installing Windows Server 2008. If you are starting the installation from an existing operating system and are connected to a network or the internet, choose whether to get updates during the installation. Click either go online to get the latest updates for installation or do not get the latest update for installations. Fourth, with Volumes and Enterprise License edition of Windows Server 2008, you might not need to provide a product key during installation of the operating system with retail editions. However, you will be prompted to enter a product key and then click Next to continue. Fifth, you will need to choose whether to perform a full server installation or a cold server installations. Sixth, if you are prompted for language and keyboard setting, choose your language, time, and currency format and your keyboard layout. Seventh, under which type of installation do you want? You will need to select the type of installation you want setup to perform. Because you are performing a clean installation to completely replace an existing installations or configure a new computer. Select Customs as the installation type. Eighth, under where do you want to install Windows, you will need to select the disk or disk and partitions on which you want to install the operating systems. Windows Server 2008 requires between 8 and 40 GB of disk space for installations. Ninth, setup starts the installation of the operating systems. During this procedure, setup copies the full disk image of Windows Server 2008 to the location you have selected and then expands it 10th. Then you will see the initial configuration task console. Use this console to perform initial configuration tasks, such as setting the computer name. You are upgrading the operating system. You do not need to choose an installation location. During this process, setup copies the full disk image of Windows Server 2008 to the system disk. Afterward, setup installs features based on the computer's configuration and detected hardware. If the type of licensing you are using requires product activations after installation, you should activate Windows within 30 days of installations. And you can now activate Windows over the internet without being restricted by the secure configurations. To do this, perform the following steps. First, click Start and then click Control Panel. Second, click System and Maintenance and then click the Activate Windows Now link under Windows Activation. Third, in the Windows Activation dialog box, click Activate Windows Online Now. After you have installed a server and logged on, you might be ready to call it a day. Don't do this yet because you should first perform a few final post-installation procedures. Use device managers. If you find problems, you might need to download and install updated drivers for the computers. You are finished with device managers until every piece of hardware is working properly. And ensure that the TCP/IP configuration is correct and that any additional settings are applied as necessary for the network. Test TCP/IP networking from the command line using pin or trace routes and in the Windows operating system by trying to browse the network. Use event viewers to check Windows event logs. Any startup warnings or errors will be returned to the logs. Use the Computer Management Console to check and finalize the disk partitions. Often you must create the server's applications partitions or configure software RAID. For example, you might need to change the display settings, virtual memory page file usage, or the server service configurations. You might also need to add local group and user accounts to the server per standard IP procedures. After you have configured the server and optimized its settings, perform a final reboot to ensure that, first, the server starts. Second, all the server service starts. Third, no other errors occurred. And you are almost done, but not quite. After your server up and run correctly, don't forget to create a full backup of the servers, which we will show you how to do it in the later sections. Here we show you how to install Windows Server 2008. First, we put the Windows Server 2008 installation DVD into the computer's DVD-ROM drive. The first window you will see is the language setting. Pick the language you want to use to install. Time and currency format, keyboard. And when you finished, click Next. When you are ready, click Install Now to start the process. And the Windows needs you to input the product key to activate the Windows. And you can input the product key on your DVD cover now, or choose Enter your product key later by clicking Note. And select the edition of Windows that you purchased. Here we choose a Windows Server 2008 standard full installations. Then check Accept, click Next. In this step, read the license term. And click I accept the license terms. And click Next. And you will need to select the type of the installations you want to set up to perform. Because you are performing a clean installation to completely replace the existing installation of or configure a new computer, select Custom Advanced as the installation type. And you will need to select the disk or disk and partitions on which you want to install the operating systems. Windows Server 2008 requires between 8 and 40 gigabytes of disk space of installations. Here we show you how to configure the disk, create a new partitions or delete the partitions. After you select the location to install, you need to format the disk first. So format the disk. So click Next. So the Windows starts copying files to the partitions and expanding files. And installing features and updates. And reboot the computer to proceed to the next step. And the computer will load the installation files and proceed to the next phase. So here comes the last phase of completing installations. Once it's done, it will reboot again to finish the installations. And the user's password must be changed before logging on the first time. And enter the new password for the administrator. And you can create a password reset disk in case you forget the password. We enter the password, and again, and click OK to finish the setup. And you can go to the computer properties to see the installed version of Windows. And you can perform initial configuration of the server. Once the configuration setting is done, your installation is finished, and the server is ready to use.